The night sky burned red. Distant explosions echoed across the ruined city, but Dr. Adrian Hale kept moving, clutching his small medical bag against his chest. He'd been told to stay inside the hospital bunker, that crossing the streets tonight was suicide, but none of that mattered. Not after the radio crackled with the voice of a terrified soldier, begging for help. A young woman was bleeding out near the old marketplace, and there was no one left to save her except him. The war had emptied the streets of everything except fire, smoke, and shadows. Adrian kept low, running between shattered walls, the crunch of glass under his boots a constant, sharp sound. Bullets cracked overhead. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to turn back, to seek the relative safety of the bunker. But he forced himself forward, because somewhere out there, a single life was slipping away, and he had taken an oath he refused to break. As he reached the market ruins, he saw her. She was lying in the dust beside a collapsed stall, her uniform torn, one hand pressed weakly to her abdomen. Her name tag read Mira. Her breathing was so shallow, it was barely there. Adrian dropped to his knees beside her. "Stay with me, Mira," he whispered, his hands shaking as he fumbled to open his bag. Her eyes fluttered open, hazy with pain and confusion. You came alone?" she managed to ask. He nodded without looking up, his focus entirely on the wound. "Doesn't matter. We're getting you out." He worked quickly, his fingers surprisingly steady even as the ground trembled from nearby blasts. He applied pressure, injected what little pain relief he had, and sealed the wound as best he could with the limited supplies. Mira winced but held on, her eyes fixed on him as if he were the last living thing in a dying world. "Why risk this?" she whispered, her voice fragile. "Wara, it kills everyone." Adrian finally met her gaze, his own eyes reflecting the fires around them. "Not tonight," he said firmly. "Not you." Suddenly, the deep guttural rumble of a tank vibrated through the air, growing closer. The street throbbed with a new, more immediate danger. Without a second thought, Adrian lifted Mira into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, a fragile weight against the chaos. He began moving back the way he came, step by slow, agonizing step, every muscle in his body burning under her weight. The sky lit up again, a brilliant, terrifying flash that threw the narrow alleyways into stark relief and blew dust across their path. A shockwave hit, and for a heart-stopping moment, he lost his footing, nearly dropping her. But Mira, with the strength he didn't know she had left, tightened her grip around his neck. "Don't leave me," she whispered, her breath hot against his ear. "I won't," he promised, even though he wasn't sure he'd survive the next minute, let alone the journey back. They moved like ghosts through the wreckage, slipping between the skeletons of broken cars, crossing open ground only when the world went momentarily quiet. It was an impossible dance with death, a rhythm of stop and go, dictated by the symphony of destruction around them. Halfway to the hospital, just as he thought they might make it, a new burst of gunfire erupted from somewhere behind them. Adrenaline surged through Adrian. He ran. He didn't feel his legs. He only felt her faint heartbeat against his chest, a tiny drumbeat of life he was desperate to protect. When the hospital gates finally came into sight, two medics rushed out, shouting and waving him in. They were a beacon in the darkness. Adrian collapsed the moment they took Mira from his arms, his vision blurred, his ears ringing, as he watched them wheel her inside, a whirlwind of urgent activity swallowing her up. He had done his part. Now it was up to them. Hours passed in a hazy, exhausted blur. He sat on the floor of a sterile hallway, the grime of the city still clinging to him. A nurse eventually approached, her face etched with fatigue, but softened by a tired smile. She tapped his shoulder gently. "She made it," she said. Adrian closed his eyes, a profound wave of relief washing over him. His body began to shake, not from fear anymore, but from the immense weight of everything he had carried through that nightmare. Later, when Mira woke up, her voice was stronger. She asked him the same question everyone else had. Why? Why would he cross a war zone for one person? Adrian sat beside her bed, exhausted, covered in dust, his hands still trembling slightly. He looked at her, at this life he'd pulled back from the brink, and the answer was simple. "Because," he said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "In a world tearing itself apart, saving even one life still matters." Mira reached out and took his hand. In that moment, he wasn't just a doctor to her. He was the man who had defied a war to bring her back from the edge of death. He was the man who reminded her that humanity, in its most stubborn and beautiful form, could still survive, even in the darkest of places. In his simple, selfless act, he had saved more than her life. He had saved a piece of hope in a world that had forgotten what it looked like. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing for more content that explores the depths of human courage and compassion. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.